Cool. Welcome everybody to this morning's meeting of the Environmental Implementation Committee, 11th of May 2023. I will open with the karakia. I'll try a different karakia this morning, so let's see how it goes. E te whanau whea te mataranga kia maranga e kia whaitaki nā mahi katoa tu maia tu kaha aroa atu, aroa mai, tata ia tatu katoa. For this family, seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all that you do, stand tall, be strong. Let us show respect for each other. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any apologies for today? I think we do, don't we? We've obviously got Elliot and Tim Mifflin as well. Anybody else? How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Council Laws is on.
Okay, so that's it. We've got 2 apologies. I'll move accept those apologies and acknowledge that Kevin Malcolm, Councillor Malcolm, been away at 10. So I'll move those. Do we have a seconder? Kate, those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Well, today we're very fortunate to have how many public forum? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 public forum. I'll invite Chris forward if he's here. Chris, are you here?
Yeah.
Mover and second. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Chris isn't here yet. Chris isn't here. What about Andrew Sims? It's okay. We jiggle things if you're here.
I'm here. Yep.
Right, Andrew. And I think you've got some photos or something to show us.
I've just got 2 photographs which I think have been preloaded.
Some know which ones. I can show one at a time.
Cool. So to all those speaking in the public forum, we have extended the time allowance for public forum. And just as a matter of record, what we're looking at is a maximum of 5 minutes speaking time and 5-minute question time. And I've got Liz here who's going to give me a kick when we get close to those times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're in your hands, Andrew.
Thank you, Chairperson, councillors, for this opportunity. My name's Andrew Sims. I'm the current chair of the Mosgiel Taieri Community Board. And I'm here to speak to our submission regarding flood resilience on the Taieri Plains. It's our belief that our community has every right to assume that the Otago Regional Council is doing everything possible to prevent loss of life and loss of property from adverse rain events. The Silver Stream Flood Protection Scheme was built in 1974 to cope with 175 cumecs of flow at the Gordon Road Bridge. Currently, by the ORC's own modelling, the Silver Stream at this point will now only cope with 115 cumecs before it overtops. And that's a 34% loss of capacity. I hold in my hand here a recommending report. This recommending report was authored by Dr. Jean-Luc Payan and Bikesh Sridhar in 2019, and it details the loss of capacity in the Silver Stream. And it also details what needs to be done to return it to its engineered capacity of 175 cubic metres. However, the last paragraph in the report goes on to say that doing this would need to be decided by a cost-benefit analysis. The work hasn't been done. If we can look at the photographs, please. If you can look at the first one, the Silver Stream aggradation photo. That's a photograph of typical aggradation on the Silver Stream. That's caused by gravel build-up and also the subsidence of the bank in that area. If we could bring up the blockage one, or the next photograph, sorry, I can't quite remember what it's called. That's a collapse that occurred in 2018. That's blocking nearly 50% of the channel. That's 400 metres above Te Puna o Whakaehu, a $25 million council swimming pool. If we get a rain event like they've had, anything like they've had in the North Island, that pool's going under, and that blockage there is part of the reason that it's going under. I also hold here an affidavit in an environment court matter between the DCC and the ORC, where Dr. Payan says that the silver stream is maintained to a high standard. That's despite his own report showing in 2019 that it isn't, and those photographs showing that it isn't. So I'm here to advocate for the silver stream to be returned to its engineered capacity of 175 cubic metres. It's detailed in this report here from 2019 what needs to be done to make that happen. It hasn't been done, and the rain's coming. And I think we have the right to ask for that work to be done without delay. There's an enormous amount of people on the Taieri that pay a targeted rate for flood protection. But I think everybody on the Taieri, including the citizens of Mosgiel, have the right to believe this work is, that their regional council is doing everything it can to protect them.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Is that the extent of your submission?
Yep.
Cool. So I open it up to councillors for points of clarification only. By the way, thank you for coming along to our council communicating your concern.
We appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, cool. Okay, councillors, any points of clarification? Okay, it all seems pretty clear in terms of what you're trying to communicate. So well done for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let him in.
Okay, so we've got Chris Ford online, and also welcome Michael's online at Zoom. Chris Ford, of course, is speaking on behalf of Disabled Persons Assembly. Yeah. So, Chris, can you hear us, Chris?
Can indeed, thank you. Kia ora koutou, everyone, good councillors, Chair. I just want to just briefly outline what our submission entailed. I have no doubt that councillors have read the full submission, and I will just briefly rather, just go through the key points. The first is that we essentially support the upgrade of the council's existing headquarters, the building of the new headquarters, given that the existing headquarters, the temporary building in Philip Blank House, is not really fit for purpose in terms of the fact that its accessibility is rather challenging. For example, excuse me, the fact of the matter is that that wheelchair users can't reach the counter in the building. I attended a meeting with councillors in February, and other of my colleagues from DPA found that to be the case. That's just one example. The other is that the lifts are rather narrow, so that sort of thing. What was that? Sorry?
The counter's too high, is it, Chris, when you're in your
Yes,
wheelchair?
all of that.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Apologies. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, those are the concerns that we have with the building, and that's why we support the new building going forward. And we're very pleased that council is going to interact with disabled people on the design of that. Secondly, we would like to be involved in climate change discussions around, for example, the Southern Futures. And we're very pleased, by the way, that we've been involved in that discussion thus far. However, we would like to have some degree of greater involvement in terms of, for example, setting up a mechanism whereby we would interact with the council under something that we would see as similar to the arrangements which have been concluded between disabled people and the local council in Bristol, UK. and that would be a really good way of doing things. Perhaps something like having a disabled people's climate change reference group, and perhaps establishing others that would be along the same lines for other population groups, including Māori and so forth. So having those advisory mechanisms there to develop climate change policies that would mean that the impact on different population groups can be taken into account in our perspectives then. The third thing that we did cover is obviously the perennial issue of public transport. We've come a long way since the days when there were no accessible buses. There are accessible buses on most bus routes now. However, there are still issues we talked about in our submission. If councillors took note of the issues around, for example, the difference between the height of the bus and the pedestrian footpaths, and the real gaps that can emerge, the issues around mounting the accessible ramps and so forth on buses. That is an issue I know that is going to have to be worked on with the DCC, but we hope that those engagements will continue around improving bus stops and other infrastructure with the City Council and with councils in other areas. Also, I just wish to congratulate, by the way, Councillor Ware on his recently successful motion to join the Equal Public Transport Coalition's campaign for free bus fares around Aotearoa. That was a very good motion, and we supported that because we're also, as DPA, members of the coalition. So well done to Councillor Ware, because affordability of public transport is a real issue for disabled people. And just to round things out, we talked around also with the council in February around issues concerning civil defence and emergency responsiveness, and about investing in that insofar as the needs of disabled people were concerned. In the recent Auckland and North Island emergencies, with Cyclone Gabrielle and with the Auckland floods, there were a number of stories of disabled people who experienced very adverse consequences in terms of, for example, we heard of a wheelchair user who slept in their wheelchair for 3 nights in Auckland before they were put onto emergency accommodation. So those sorts of things need to be taken account of. The needs of disabled people in terms of meeting our needs during emergency situations need to be taken into account by the Regional Council, and DPA would like a seat at the table around those issues, around discussing those issues as well on the regional welfare group that oversees emergency responsiveness. And lastly, we would like to see, and I would like to really strongly emphasize this, DPA would like to see an advisory group, a disability issues advisory group, established on the same basis as that which has been established at the City Council, to really bring a disability perspective into council's decision making, because we, as disabled people, are already being one of the most adversely affected groups, disproportionately affected groups from climate change, and also to discuss other issues such as public transport accessibility and anything else that the council is undertaking. We wish to be a part of those discussions. Anyway, Chair, I turn it back to you for me to take any questions from councillors.
Oh,
Chair.
thank you, Chris. Right, any points of clarification from councillors? If not, I'd just like to reaffirm, a big thank you for your perspective that we need to have front of mind in terms of all our considerations. So thank you for your work, Chris, and we've got annual plan, long-term plan coming up, and your perspective, your group's perspective, important part of the community needs to be considered. Thank you.
Most certainly. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chris, Gretchen, did I miss your hand?
No, I was a little bit slow in getting my hand up, sorry, but yeah, thank you very much for presenting, Chris, and for coming along and talking to us early on as well in this triennium. We really appreciate that relationship, but just as a question, the most effective way, in your opinion, that we can continue a relationship and input in an ongoing way across all of the issues that you've talked about. So how would that work best from your perspective, engaging with our community, with our council?
Well, there are two ways. One is continuing to regularly meet with us, with DPA, and perhaps with other DPOs, disabled people's organisations in our area. Then they include, for example, Blind Citizens, People First, and Deaf Aotearoa, which has the Otago Deaf Society. So there are that's one way. And the other, ultimately, as we've said in our submission, is to have a permanent advisory group, disability advisory group, and feeding into council the perspective of the disabled community on issues that come before it.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like a really effective way forward and something that we would be very keen to do. So yeah, thank you for coming and your patience with us, and also, yeah, your willingness to be involved all the time. We really appreciate it, and we'll definitely put some thought to that. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Gretchen.
That's great. Yes, and thank you, Gretchen. Just one more thing. There's also the Access for All group. I forgot to mention that, of which DPA is a part, which comes together to discuss issues. Sorry. Councillor, who was the councillor who was speaking? The chair?
Gretchen, the council chair was speaking. We've also got Kate.
I've just got a really simple question. So Chris, you mentioned the getting from wheelchairs especially onto buses or any accessibility issues. And as we look at climate change and potentially having deeper guttering in the road infrastructure, I've got two questions for you about that. One is, I haven't used a bus with a lip that can go up and down for the height. Is that a regular thing in buses, that they can meet the lip of the bus? I know there's ones of buses can go up and down to make it easier for access. Is that a regular thing?
Well, insofar as I know, it can be a regular issue that disabled people encounter in terms of the gap between, say, the footpath and the steps on the bus. So that's a real issue, because I encountered that, for example, when the Otago Regional Council ran an open day aimed at the disabled community some years ago. I was able to get onto the bus, but the gradient of the bus was such that I found it difficult to get back down safely. Okay. And that really affected my confidence in using buses. Let's put it that way.
Okay, and just the only other part of that is, you talked about in our office how awkward it is with the counter. I just want to test the bus or children get on buses, but I think our signage is probably more adults. And I just want to check, do you have problems seeing any of the display boards or anything that we have up, or the height of timetables on signposts, those sort of things that we can do better? I'm just asking, is that an issue when you're...
I think that is an issue. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there is the rollout of the new national timetabling and information, digital information coming, and a system coming for public transport, and the electronic information. And I think that we, as a disabled community, need to be engaged with throughout that process, that implementation process, to ensure that we can read the information clearly, that it's placed in spaces that we can access, and also that it is readable for blind and low vision people as well.
Cool. No,
Those
thank
sorts
you.
of issues. Audio information is quite important too.
Cool. I'm sure that Pam to my right taking all that on board. Okay, I think thank you very much. Our time has disappeared, Chris. A big thank you again.
Thank you, Chair Noon. Thank you.
Chair Noon? No, it's not Chair Noon.
I can't see
Right.
you where I'm Scott, Councillor Scott. Thank you.
Cool. Paul Weir. Apologies, Councillor.
He was doing a great job.
Best I say nothing.
Yeah.
Marina team,
Marina.
I'm Paul Ware, Chairman Cedar Hill Community Board, and beside me we've got Tracy and Leanne, who was previously on the Cedar Hill Community Board as well.
Cool.
This morning, I would like to bring up, since we're just talking about buses, we're going to keep on going, so trajectory, the buses in around school times. First up, I want to say a thank you to Julian Phillips, who I've been corresponding with on buses. He's been really helpful, really good, and he's come to all our meetings and answered questions and asked for suggestions and things. And so we really appreciated that, which has been great. The problems that we seem to be facing at the moment is, well, my son's been at high school now at Otago Boys for 4 months. I've had to pick him up 5 times because the bus coming out of school is too full. The second bus that's meant to turn up on run 77 hasn't appeared. So I've got a phone call at 4:30 from my son Jesse saying, "Hey Dad, there's no bus." I pull up, so okay, I grab my other 2 kids, figure out what we're doing. I pull up the bus stop, pick up Jesse, and then he's got 4 mates who need to get to Brighton, and that bus that's taking them to Abbotsford, Green Island, to hop onto the next one, it's already gone. They missed that chance. So I'm picking them up, taking them out to Brighton, dropping them off at their house. So their parents aren't in limbo or having to pick up the sister or someone who's somewhere else. So that's a bit of a problem that we're facing, and having to ring up principals in the morning saying, sorry, your child's going to be late because the bus again hasn't turned up. I would say that Go Bus app has been handy. It has shown with some of the buses the times that they are coming, but yesterday we had another issue. Jesse went down and he's waiting with another guy, and they're looking at the Go Bus app, and it said it should have been here 5 minutes ago. They've been waiting 20 minutes. It hadn't appeared. Next bus wasn't until 25 minutes. So I had to ring up the principal again and said, "Hey, sorry, my son's going to be late because of this." And the bus hub, we sort of try to figure out another way for Jesse to get home, catch a bus. I thought if you catch a bus early before it comes to your pickup just outside the Octagon, you can hang out in the bus hub. So he's had some good social interactions there, and I'd be pretty sure I'm not the only parent that would say they're not a fan of the 12-year-old, 10-year-olds hanging out at the bus hubs at the moment until things improve. But yeah, so I'll pass on to Tracy now.
Cool.
Yep, so different schools involved here. We've got Bell McEwen and King's High School. So the King's bus is similar issue in the morning, 1 bus for King's and Queen's High School. We'll turn up, pick up the kids, take the first lot to school, leave a whole massive group of kids waiting in Green Island for, I don't know, probably half an hour. Then he comes back, picks up the second lot. So I get regular messages from my son saying, "Mum, I'm late for school. I'm still on the bus." So that's regular occurrence in the mornings. After school is quite similar to either it's the same issue, 1 bus, or sometimes even 2 buses, but they're not big enough and not all of the kids can fit on. So yeah, it's not great having the kids left standing on the side of the road half an hour in the morning, especially coming up for winter. You know, the old bus service worked perfectly well. So it's a shame that changed. The other issue is the Belmac service, which no longer runs. We're having to get children from Wardenville, Brighton, Abbotsford to Concord in the morning to catch that bus, with a lot of parents actually just taking their kids to school now. We were told there was going to be a service up and running for that. Hopefully by April, we're still waiting. And that would be a service from Green Island through Kaikoura Valley as close to Belmac as we could get, and then over the hill to cater for the Otago Boys students as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main issues. Obviously it puts a lot more pressure on parents as well, trying to get their kids to school.
Cool.
picking them
Okay,
up.
so bus issues.
Bus issued. So I was part of the Saddle Hill Community Board previous term, and I did a lot of work directly with staff, trying to get the bus sorted. And there was a huge hole left when the Otago Road Services bus ended. And I personally believe the MOE bus service is failing our kids as well. And I really appreciate the work that the council here has done to try and make the public system work for the kids. I know it's not easy. I know it's been difficult with COVID and with driver shortages and things. And I know a lot of work has gone into trying to improve it. But I guess what we're saying, and the three of us represent lots and lots of parents that are really struggling to get their kids to school on time, safely.
Okay, no, cool. Thank you. We've gone through our 5 minutes. So look, Pam, is there any comment that you would like to make in terms of the whole bus processes? That seems to be an issue, one bus and you have to wait for the bus to come back and then half an hour. Any comment?
Well, the Ministry of Education used to provide school bus services, and as just commented on, they used to contract Otago Road Services to provide those buses. The Otago Road Services didn't do as well in the last school bus tender as they were hoping, and as a result, they've gone into receivership. They closed down, and the public transport service, which we provide, has had to pick up the pieces as a result. I'm working with the Ministry of Education to try and resolve this. It's far from ideal for parents, and this is just a problem that's happening all over New Zealand, frankly. The Ministry of Education don't believe they have a responsibility for urban school children. And as a result, and particularly where there's public transport services available, and as our public transport services have expanded, we have more public transport services available. It's not my view that it's ideal for school children to be using public transport. I'd rather they were using
yes, but they are.
School buses. So,
They are.
so that's the issue essentially, and we're working with the MOE to try and resolve this. But I'm very pleased to hear that our staff member Julian's been working with you closely on this. It's an issue which has not been of our making, but we are trying to help you resolve it.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
No, and we do appreciate that. Julian's been very good. And yeah, we're just asking for extra buses to be put on at peak times at school times.
Either that or there's a scheduling thing, like that you have a bus going half an hour before the next bus, and certain kids are going to go on the first bus and not the second bus.
Yeah,
But I think what you're saying is it's unsatisfactory. Kate.
I have a different view than some people about a public transport service being available for all. And I've had interesting discussions with people who don't necessarily agree with that. Are you concerned with, and are you asking that we have a school bus service, or, which I think Kim was referring, or the CEO was referring to, or are you happy that they just get on a service that is broader and may do other schools, but also other people?
Yeah, we would love a dedicated school bus service. That'd be great. But at this point in time, until that happens, if it does, we're asking for extra buses to be put on at peak school times to cater for those kids.
So you're happy if they're a public service with other people?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? If not, a big thank you. Food for thought. This is a real issue. This council's been putting a lot of focus into the buses, and we had a meeting yesterday on our bus committee, PT committee. But thank you for keeping that front of mind and telling us what the reality is on the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll invite Paul Kavanagh.
Even online, isn't it?
Yes. Okay, cool. Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, kia ora, ata mare.
Marina? Yeah.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you've got 5 minutes, if that's okay, Paul, and then there'll be 5 minutes of any questions.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Now I have done a really quick presentation, if it's okay, if I can share screen, but no dramas if not.
I'll be able to share
Yeah.
screen, he's saying.
Yes, it was-
Sure.
Where are you based, Paul?
I'm based in Queenstown.
Oh,
Yes, apologies I couldn't come down in person. Got quite a
Okay.
bit on at the minute, which is good. But yeah, hopefully this suffices.
cool.
Okay, I'll just share screen now.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so ko tēnei taka mihi ki ngā tangata whena o te rohi hi. But firstly, just a huge thank you for this opportunity today. And thanks for your support over the last year. ORC part funded our conservation standards workshop in May last year, which brought together about 80 attendees a day over a week from 23 different conservation organizations. So it was really humbling, really inspiring to see such dedication and passion in the room. And it was, yeah, really great starter for our project. And you guys also part funded or are facilitating a mohua translocation into the Matukituki Valley, which we're hoping is going to go ahead this spring, just dependent on the beach mast. So again, a massive kia ora and thank you for that. So again, just a quick introduction to our project, because hopefully everyone knows a little bit about us, but we are one of the largest and most exciting conservation projects in the country, and with our project area encompassing a total of 660,000 hectares. So this whole district basically, and that's happening in your region. So a lot of work going on. And we've 6 major consortium partner groups, but in total, we're supporting the mahi of nearly 90 community groups. So we are from the people, of the people, for the people, basically. And our goal is to provide a safe haven for our endangered native wildlife, because we do have over 30 at-risk species in our project area. Huge amount of these species are endemic, so they're only found here in New Zealand, as the same for about 70% of our wildlife. So it's really, really important to conserve them, and we do have obligations now with COP15 and with climate change and things that we do need to protect these wonderful animals. And also a lot of our operational rohi is in World Heritage Area, so there's also the global obligation to protect these species and the habitats. So I guess just to quickly touch on where we are operational, our project area stretches from Makarora right down to through Matukituki Valley into Wanaka, over Motatapu into Tahuna, Queenstown, and up to the head of the lake into Glenorchy. So it's a lot of incredible mahi happening in this space. Pre-project, we had about 6,400 traps. We're now over 10,500 traps across this district. And that's just part of our mahi. We're also increasing biodiversity monitoring, and we're trying to do that work better and to better effects and more efficient as well. So I guess as we were looking through my submission, which hopefully you got to review, I just saw a lot of similarities in our kaupapa and our action plans and our mahi. So I guess with your Protect, Connect, Enhance, Enable, there's lovely alignment with our strategic pillars as well. So for example, Protect, we're trying to protect our flourishing biodiversity. Connect, we're trying to connect with the community, with Mana Whenua, and also connect the community with our nature, with biodiversity. Enhance, we're always trying to enhance our engagement, both with the community and Mana Whenua. And then the big thing with enabling is we're trying to enable the community to do more conservation work. Similar with our kaupapa, ORC are all around positive relationships, as are we. Our really key focus area is relationships. We want to be a trusted partner, not just with ORC and QLDC and DOC, but also our community groups with Mana Whenua. We work a lot with Waiwanaka and Mana Tahuna, some other key conservation projects in this region, and other predator control groups like Predator Free Dunedin and groups like that. High country farmers are a huge part of both of our puzzles, and we're lucky we've really engaged and committed high country farmers that we're working with here. And again, just that community feel is really important to us. Some of the other key ones, storytelling, obviously we need to celebrate our successes in conservation and create hope, which is probably the most important thing in environmentalism. Knowledge advancement, so sharing all of our data. So we're We've a really key, strong pillar around being open sourced on all of our material and sharing that widely, and not siloing any information. We want to work with anyone who wants to work with us. But measuring our progress and impact is really important. We're all short of resources, so we need to ensure that we're using our resources to best bang for our buck. And project growth, obviously, for the scale of our conservation goals in New Zealand, we need to keep continually looking to grow and expand what we're doing and do that work as well as possible. And innovation is a really key part of our puzzle, because I guess for our lofty conservation goals in New Zealand, which are really motivating, we're not going to achieve that with box traps. So we need to think smarter in some ways, and we're trying to be really open to that. So we're doing a lot of work with eDNA. I know RSC are as well. And we have kind of met some of your team around this space, because we are in our region a really high, probably the highest diversity of lizard species in the country. And a lot of these are cryptic and difficult to monitor. When they're difficult to monitor, they're difficult to conserve. So we're using some really exciting space with eDNA analysis for our reptile monitoring. We're also using new traps and new technology like toxin delivery devices called Spitfire. We're doing a field trial for that, and AT220 self-resetting traps. We're also aligning that with some really cool new tech with a node system, so we can remotely monitor our traps. So remotely monitor bait levels and battery levels and what they're catching, when they're catching, because again, it's all about that efficient resource use. That really helps us do more work, do it better, and do it more efficiently. And again, the key thing, sharing that information and knowledge as widely as possible. So I guess a key thing for us, we are a multi-generational project. Mahi Motu Taio, so Jobs for Nature was our springboard, but we have been discussed since 2017. We want to be a multi-generation project. We are a community-led project, so we feel that we're key deliverers of ORC's Mahi. So as such, we really need your support going forward, and it has to be strong support. We need you to advocate for us as well. Our work is too important for it to lose the momentum we built up, but also to lose those gains, because they will go backwards quite quickly. And we're kind of 16 months into our operation, and we feel we've achieved a lot, but we're just getting started. And I guess a key thing, we are in our submission, we have flagged with both ORC and QLDC for funding requests in the LTP. But a key thing we need is some bridging support, because we do have a lot of really good leads for funding long term, but we cannot have losing our staff. I've been working in conservation in the Queenstown region for about 15 years, and this is the first time there's been really good career pathways in conservation. I think it's really important for our region as part of our kind of getting rid of our over-reliance on tourism. We now have really skilled, 22 really skilled, experienced conservation staff. We need to keep those staff. So we are requesting 300K in bridging funding to keep us going past June until we hear from LTP and some other funding sources.
Thank you, Paul. I'm hoping you're near the end, because we're past our 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is last slide here. So, and again, in the current annual funding requirements of 1.5 million a year, we know it's going to be a mosaic of funding. So what we are flagging as well is encouraging that we could receive 500K per annum in the long-term planning as well. So I guess we want to be part of the solution for our environmental issues, and a huge thank you, kia ora, and thanks for your support. So happy to take any questions.
Cool, thank you. I'll open up questions, clarification. Okay.
You've talked about $300,000 this year in order to save staff. What would the cost of getting that capacity back up if we didn't give that 300,000?
Well, I guess a key thing for us is sourcing staff, because as you know, staffing issues are quite difficult in Queenstown. We were really lucky, and not just in Queenstown, throughout our region. And we were really lucky. A lot of our staff are locals who moved back during COVID. And we, again, found career pathways for them, and they relocated with the families. So I think, knowing the work issues in Queenstown and the housing issues in this region, trying to build up a team again, I really worry that we won't be able to build up even close to as good a team as we have. I think the rebuild will be close to $750,000 minimum to rebuild our team and to get those gains back.
Thank you, Paul. Kevin?
Yeah, Paul, thanks for the work you're doing. It is quite sensational, really, and at a very well priced job that you're doing. But listen, it appears to me that you're actually doing the work that our Department of Conservation should actually have been doing for many years. And so I wonder what conversations you're actually having with them. And they always say they have no money, but in reality, you're doing the job that they should be doing. So I just wonder what sort of your work you're doing with them, as in getting funding from them and support.
Yeah, kia ora, Kevin. Yeah, great question. Because again, we did have the DG, Penny Nelson, Director General of DOC, down last week, and we did flag that with her as well. But big thing with DOC is they work on PCL and public conservation land. Our work needs to be much more than that. Where we can do work that DOC can't is on private land with the high country farmers, for example, and also in the community space. So we feel we're better resourced and better able to work with the community than DOC. They are a part of our puzzle going forward, but they have flagged that funding is not going to be readily available, but we are hoping they are part of the patchwork of funding we receive. But again, the key thing is that we're looking, even with Takahe, that's going to be a Takahe translocation onto farmland at the Reese Valley Station. So it's outside of DOC's operational rohi.
Thanks,
Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Kevin. Lloyd?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Thanks, Paul, for your presentation. Quick question. You're getting funding from all sorts of areas just now to get to your 1.5. My question is, do you get direct cash funding from the landowners and residents that live within your 64,000 hectare targeted area to support your project?
Yeah, well, what we do a lot of the time is landowners will purchase some traps from us, and we do a lot of funding matches with them. So, for example, Temple Peak up at the head of the lake in the Reese Valley, they purchase some traps. We match that, and we'll install the traps for them. A key thing for us is that our project is so large and scalable. So we're trying to empower the community by providing knowledge and traps and boots on the ground, and getting them to support that long-term through trap checking and things as well. An area we are looking at as well is in the tourism sector, trying to get those guys involved. But a lot of the funding we've received to date has been project specific. It's around new trap lines, new goals, building new traps, but that doesn't help us keep the lights on and get the people in jobs to do the mahi. So that's an area where we feel we could really use your support, is to fund salaries for staff as well. Because a lot of our grants, like through CLT, we receive money to build traps to disseminate to our partner groups, but they don't fund salaries. So we know it's going to be a patchwork, a mosaic of funding. And we feel, well, we're very hopeful that ORC and QLDC can be part of that.
So the answer to that is the local landowners do not contribute towards the running of the project and paying of salaries.
No, not a huge amount. No, generally in traps. Yeah.
Thanks, Lloyd. Thanks, Paul. Alexa?
Actually, that's covered my questions too, thanks.
Cool. Well, my final one, because we've got 27 seconds left, is so who are your key funders at the moment, Paul?
Well, most of our funding came from our Jobs for Nature, Mahi Motatayo, which was our springboard. We've received about 700k of additional funding since we started, but that's all project specific. It's not foundational funding to keep us going. And that's kind of increased our Mahi rather than funded it long term.
Okay. Hey, a big thank you, Paul. I think we're done. Thank you for your submission, good professional submission, and that will be certainly taken on board. Okay.
Kia ora, guys. Thank you all.
Kia ora. Thank you. And next is Barbara Anderson from the West Harbour Community Board. Thank you for coming, Barbara.
Kia ora koutou.
Yep. And you've got 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Kia ora koutou, ko Dr. Barbara Anderson, aho. I'm here to speak today on behalf of the West Harbour community in support of our written submission. You'll all have had a copy of our written submission. Specifically, we have three broad areas that we'd like you to address, or we'd like to bring before you. The public transport across West Harbour, Raising environmental standards across West Harbour through the environmental monitoring, protecting the Aramwana ecological area from erosion, and improved pest species management. And finally, supporting an Otago Harbour user working group. And I believe that there has been some motion on that in the last couple of weeks since this went in. I'll speak first to the improving public transport, because it's the biggest issue on West Harbour that is most urgent, and we really require substantial movement and substantial work on that before the next cruise ship season. The West Harbour residents along West Harbour, from the whole of Port Chalmers, Aramwana, everyone who can take a bus can no longer take a bus. So basically our residents had their entire lives upended for 6 months through the lack of a reliable public transport system. Basically, school children weren't getting to school, people going to appointments for doctor's appointments, people with elderly people standing, disabled people standing, people with autistic children in a crowded bus where the child had to stand the entire distance with the roadworks that adds up to 45 minutes sometimes. I know that you've had repeated requests from myself and other members of the West Harbour Community Board, but we just do really want to raise this again because we cannot have a repeat of this next year. We appreciate.
Thank you. We've been aware of this issue. Any response?
Oh.
Well, we've had the perfect storm, haven't we, in public transport, so you're aware that we haven't even had enough bus drivers.
Sorry, I can't quite hear. Could you speak?
We haven't even had enough bus drivers to service our normal full schedule, so we've had the perfect storm. On top of that, of course, the cruise ship passengers haven't been supported in the usual way because of Kiwi Rail decisions. So there's been a range of reasons, but we're working closely with Port Otago. We now have our full complement of bus drivers back in Dunedin. We have put on buses occasionally where we've been able to source a bus driver to put on an extra bus, as you're aware. And yes, we're very well aware of this issue. And my view is that there won't be a repeat of it.
With respect, we've heard that before, and I've brought this to lots of different places. If we take it to someone, they say it's Kiwi Rail. If we take it to you, you say it's Kiwi Rail. If we bring it up with Kiwi Rail, they say it's nothing to do with us. If we bring it up with Port Otago, they say it's nothing to do with us, it's ORC. In my view, the bus stops with ORC, you are legally obliged to have the public transport system working. If we want to stick to our carbon-free objectives, which the ORC and DCC share, and West Harbour residents share as well, then we need to have a functioning public transport system. We acknowledge that there is trouble with bus drivers and getting bus drivers, but to be honest, that's not our problem, that's your problem. And we need a solution that doesn't take 6 months, because if we're trying to encourage people to take public transport, having a reliable, efficient system is absolutely mandatory. And simple things as well, like adhering to the timetable so that people arrive at the bus stop on time for the bus and the bus has already left. That doesn't encourage people to use the public transport system. People trying to get on the bus at Sawyers Bay or St Leonard's, further down from the port cruise ship passengers, can't get on the bus. People not being able to come home from school.
Yeah.
And above all, we'd like some communication from the ORC to the residents, because we first brought this to the attention of the ORC at the beginning of the cruise ship passenger season, and the lack of communication with the residents builds frustration, and it builds frustration in the community, and it means that the community, rather than being encouraged to go on the buses, are discouraged from it. So they just find another mode. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to encourage. And yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate that you have had.
Your point's well made.
Thank you.
I, as a councillor, I'll certainly be looking out for, like Alexa, I think, on the PT committee, we need to get some information on what the solution actually is, because it's been going on for a while. That particular issue, the cruise ship issue.
Thank you. Should I speak to the environment monitoring?
You have how much time, Liz?
It's been sort of stopped a bit, so another minute.
Another minute, if that's okay.
That's fine. So the West Otago Community Board, we appreciate the continuing monitoring and the environment and health impacts existing along West Harbour, particularly Ravensdown and Port Otago, and we really would encourage you to continue with that monitoring, particularly around Ravensdown and the industry there. We'd like to request that there be some baseline monitoring of paua and shellfish and other fish populations off of Aramoana Mole and around those beaches there. We're not asking that this be prohibited, but we would like some baseline population data because we're the locals value this kaimoana off there, and there is a long-standing tradition of gathering there, but with other places being less accessible, it means that we have a switching prey type situation where we're afraid it's going to be over harvested. I'll speak quickly to the Aramoana ecological area where
Well, maybe in response to that one, that's a fisheries issue. It's a, in terms of baseline data for fisheries and that around Aramoana, you're talking to the wrong people.
Can we just listen to her?
Yeah, can we please?
Okay.
Interrupted her twice now.
So that's right, I'm just trying to give it helpful as opposed to putting the lead lines.
Sorry, protecting the Aramoana ecological area from erosion. We know that this is a complicated area and involves multiple different organisations, DOC and the Port Otago. We really would like ORC to please just, we're not asking you to do the thing, we're asking you to support us in getting it done. And that we just have a way of restoring those groins so that that valuable national ecological area is maintained. Pest management, we'd just like to note that the West Harbour Mount Cargill Quarantine Goat Islands area is in a site-led program, and we would like assistance with ensuring that that program meets its obligations there, of particularly with the sycamore and introduced pest species.
Cool. Okay.
And just finally, the user worker group, we'd very much like to be part of that working group, user group, when it is finally formed and up and running.
For a harbour plan.
For the harbour plan, yeah.
Cool.
The Otago Harbour Plan.
Great. I'm going to open up for clarification from councillors. Alexa.
I would just like to really acknowledge you coming here today.
Thank you.
And so we'd ask for something for clarification. Do you have an idea of how the cruise ship issue might be solved?
Yeah, we've had multiple ideas from the community. We would really love to see the ORC pushing for a commuter train service. We would love to see some scheduling so that there are options for the cruise ship passengers, that there's options for the residents that come before or after, so that they can actually get on with their work and that they're well aware of those. Most importantly, we think that there's some very simple solutions around the B card use. Most of the travellers on the cruise ships don't have a B card because they simply don't live in Dunedin. We feel that if all the residents were given a B card that could be topped up, they can buy it, they can purchase it, and not take cash. We've had multiple instances this year of the drivers being inundated with passengers wanting to use Australian dollars, American dollars. The drivers can't change those. So they just say, oh, get on, the bus gets filled up. The bus drivers should not be faced with that antagonism and confrontation there. Just a simple no cash rule. And the other thing is we only have one ATM in Port Chalmers, and that ATM only gives out $50 notes. And that means that one person comes up and the driver's out of change. So what we would suggest is a simple B card system where there's a minimum amount that can be put on it as a deposit, something like $20, $25 that's balanced with the shuttle cost, which I don't think is extreme, the shuttle cost, to be honest, because it's a private company that has to pay the drivers to go there and back. It's not, and nor should it be, subsidised by the New Zealand taxpayer or the Dunedin taxpayer or the Otago taxpayer. That, this is about public transport that gets residents to school, work, hospital appointments. And we really feel that some simple solutions could be optimised there.
Cool. Thanks, Barbara. Kate.
Thanks, Lisa.
Look, I just wondered if on the hub plan, I think Brian moved that we get that harbour plan going. It's well over a year since we've moved that. But my understanding is that that's been deferred to the port to run. Is that an optimal way for it to be run as far as your?
I didn't have any notice that you're talking about the user group.
Well, yes, a user group or my understanding, if we're doing some planning, I'm not quite sure where it is at the moment. I haven't heard much about it lately. But would you rather that was run by the council itself in conjunction with the DCC or run through the port?
Absolutely not through the port. No offence to the port, but they are a very vested interest in the users group of the harbour. And you know, the port's very, very good at helping us on various issues, but there are conflicts of interest there, and we would like to see commercial and recreational users, small and large, and it's really a balance of users and who's using it, and we would like to see that run by an independent group, and we would like very much to be part of that.
Thank you. Point well made, Kevin.
I'll do this as a question. Are you aware that the port has taken the initiative and drawn up an interim harbour plan that they're now giving back to us to initiate the forming of groups to get this harbour plan underway? So the port have actually taken a big step in a very impartial way, and now that's coming to fruition quite quickly.
No.
So you'll be aware of that soon.
Excellent. Again, unsure why that's being run through the port rather than Otago.
Someone had to get it going, and they've taken the initiative to get it going, but it's being handed back to everyone to have a look at. So do not panic, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, I guess my comment is that someone is the ORC.
We own the port.
I get that, but you're also a separate entity, and they have a commercial objective. And whenever we ask the port, they say we are separate. We are not the ORC. So I think we don't want to confuse those two.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other points? Thank you for your submission. You've made quite a number of points very clear. Some agitation, some actions are required in different areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we've got our final speaker, Matt Hollier. Is that correct? Oh. Thanks, Matt. Once you've sat down, we'll give you something like 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Very good. Tēnā koutou, my name is Matt Hollier. Thank you for taking your time to consider my submission. My submission has been supported by several conservation groups in the Wanaka and Queenstown areas, and I'm Queenstown based. I have extensive experience in collaborative organisations in tourism, sport, and recently in the conservation sector. And in observing the investment in the conservation sector, not just by IRC, but other entities, it's patently clear that the status quo is inadequate at truly getting the conservation outcomes we all need. I'm here to challenge this current business as usual approach for funding and influence and suggest a new model. Because quite simply, business as usual means that every year, various councils and government funds support some community conservation groups. Business as usual means that conservation groups spend hundreds of hours per annum chasing funding, time that could be invested in actually doing conservation, as they chase funding from DOC, numerous trusts, community funds, councils, sponsors, donors, business, etc. Business as usual means conservation plans can't look beyond short-term funding. Business as usual means local conservation groups juggle priorities around desires of what they would love to do for the environment with the reality of limited financial resources, overstretched volunteers, ageing volunteers, and tired contributors. Business as usual means accepting the policy-driven approach is good enough to make a difference to our community and our whenua. Business as usual means like the World Heritage areas, private land, council land, and government land in the region remain underprotected from the environmental pressures that local residents, visitors, and the climatic conditions place on them. Business as usual means waiting for someone else to solve our environment's problems. Business as usual funding is barely scratching the surface of what needs to be done. For those that are set to inherit this environment over the next 50, 100 or 1,000 years' time, we're not doing enough. It's simply operating across all conservation entities below the level of change that the region on this planet needs. New Zealand has one of the highest species extinction rates in the world and have the highest proportion of threatened native species.
Business as usual means we continue to lose these taonga. Rockreen, our reigning bird of the year, is now critically endangered. Business as usual means they will go extinct on our watch. Enough with business as usual. We need a new model. A new model sees local people solving our region's problems. A new model embraces positivity and the power of the community to enhance the endemic species, our land, and the natural waterways of our region. A new model builds on what is already working successfully elsewhere and adapts it to our region needs. A new model has the power and resources financially to act to effectively prioritise the health of our taonga species and ecosystems. A new model values the conservation sector for the complexities and challenges of getting things right. A new model provides sustained, ongoing financial support to employ passionate, knowledgeable and skilled people to get things done that are effective. A new model does all this with decisive council leadership that supports significant investment in our community for our community. A new model will truly make a difference. Wise words that are not mine have been said for a long time, but I think you've all heard them. Think global, act local. The key word is act. The recommendation I have is for the ORC to make an effective and long-term investment in a conservation collective that will enhance large-scale conservation improvements through the community, with the benefits based around efficiency in achieving conservation outcomes, effectiveness in sharing and growing knowledge, and advancing the rate of environmental conservation and biodiversity solutions through people and technological innovation. I'll circulate this all to you in an email following this meeting because I do have some bullet points around the business plan, but I summarise it as follows. Basically, in the forthcoming financial year, we need to formulate a formal alliance, collective or conservation group, which I propose as being an incorporated society across the Upper Lakes area of Queenstown and Wanaka. That would coordinate conservation plans and the efforts of people doing some good stuff. It'd be a not-for-profit incorporated society is what I propose. And from year 2 of the business plan, which starting from July 24, that the Upper Lakes is a targeted rate that collects us $5 million per annum to coordinate and lead and do conservation. This would change the funding model that currently happens up there. And from there on, we can expand, looking further down the catchments into the Central Otago area and across the wider region. I note that collective approach is something that supports what's already happening in some parts of the ORC, for integrated catchment management programs. This is an organisation that would be outside of council, but collected through a fund to support the activity of community-led conservation groups. I'm not a qualified conservationist or a scientist. I'm simply fronting a solution that I have seen from my experience across business and in the local region, that the collaboration and the buy-in of collective solutions can be achieved by this community and by the people that have the skills, enthusiasm, knowledge and effort available to make a difference. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your expectation. I open it up. Alexa.
Matt, I know you've been working on this for a wee while, and I want to thank you for coming down from Queenstown. It's a big ask when this region is so large for people to have to come to talk to us here. But can you tell me a little bit more about the DQ model, the Destination Queenstown RTO model that you think would work in this space? Can you clarify that for people?
What I'm proposing is an incorporated society that would run conservation program awards. Very similar to the regional tourism organisations in Queenstown and Wanaka. I was chair of Destination Queenstown for 5 years and on the board there for 6. And it's funded through a targeted commercial ratepayers levy in that area. It's collected by the QLEC and the money goes directly through to the incorporated society that then employs the people, does the activity. And every ratepayer has the right to be a member of it. They then contribute to an annual plan, they contribute to a strategic plan, and then the organisation runs itself outside of council, but there's money collected. That gives them longevity of planning, that gives them confidence in what they're doing over a long period of time. And it's a fantastic model because it works very well to coordinate the collective power of people without the direct encumbrances of a council system.
And just lastly, do you have the support of some of the big conservation organisations in the headwaters?
Yeah, I've got in my submission I listed a number of groups that sorry I passed it through Mike, it was a bit messy the way it came through, but yeah, I'll include all those names in my list.
We've got it. Cool. Kate?
You were in the room I think earlier when Councillor McCall asked the question about the landowners involvement in the Southern Lake Sanctuary project. What I'm intrigued with, and maybe because of your email address, What is the tourism businesses which are huge up there and their contribution other than through the DQ in your way of doing this?
Okay, so a little bit of background to my background. I'm employed by AJ Hackett Bungie, and through the Jobs for Nature process with in the COVID times, we established a company called GSD Workforce Limited, which is Good Safe Deeds. So we've connected through the Jobs for Nature to provide services to the Southern Lake Sanctuary, Rupert Dart Wildlife Trust, and the Tuckers Beach Restoration Project, all of whom got funding through the Jobs for Nature project. So we are our company employs the people to deliver the work and make it all happen.
Right.
There's possibilities, and at the local level, they're pursuing a concept called Love Queenstown and Love Wanaka, where tourists will have the opportunity to make donations to support a cause. That's been run through the tourism organisations, the Lake Wanaka Tourism and Destination Queenstown, in collaboration with the QLDC. I don't believe that money is going to be significant enough nor arrive fast enough to make an effective difference to conservation.
But do you see in the same way that we're asking questions and expecting in many ways landowners who get a benefit from pest control, would you see that businesses would, other than through a rating system, be levied for contributions to this model?
Other than a rating system, is there a way to levy a business
Yeah.
for a compulsory fee?
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, but do you see that as being part of it?
If you can get long-term sustained funding through any entity, that'd be fantastic. I believe the rating tool is the most convenient one at the moment. I'm not familiar with any other way that it could be done.
Well, the only problem with that is a lot of these businesses don't have a substantial rate.
Yeah.
Because their footprint is very small
Mhm.
in an office space,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
If there's another tool, I'm happy to pursue it. I'm just seeing this as an opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks, and I suspect we need to take this offline and build on it. You're going to present us with some more information and business plan in detail. But the first question is this coming, because we're talking about annual plan as well at the moment. Setting up an incorporated society, and you've said that would be a good thing to do, a collective at least in the interim for this next year. Are you asking us to lead that? What's our role in that? It's the first question. The next one is in the next stage, and you've said $5 million to pull together existing groups and build on that. Then you talked about our role as council in integrated catchment management, etc. Do we need both elements, or are you saying that we basically our functions get met through this collective instead?
I think there's an opportunity for you to test both. My proposal is that I see a very strong community engagement and possibility of it being run outside of ORC, the actual work, because I can see that being really effective. The choice is yours, really. Which angle? I'm just presenting you with an opportunity, which I think is reasonably compelling. In terms of forming an incorporated society, the nuts and bolts of that is quite cheap. It's what comes in behind it in terms of what would it look like, how do you create a governance structure, get full buy-in from those people that sign up for it. So support for that would be excellent. And I've got experience in forming them as well as being involved with them, so happy to be involved with that as well.
Cool. You all right, Gretchen? Thank you, Matt. Any other questions? If not, a big thank you, Matt, and reaffirm what Alex said, coming down here from Queenstown. The challenges ahead.
I'll send this all through to you shortly. I don't have a detailed business plan. It's just a summary, sort of bullet points of what I said, but it's part of an iterative process, which I'm happy further involved with.
Okay, good. Thank you. I look for a mover and a seconder to go back to standing orders. We've got a mover? Yes, we do. No. We extended the time. We extended the time. Oh, okay. So we don't need to revert. Cool, that's fine. Okay. I suggest that we adjourn for morning tea. Amanda, that makes sense?
Yes, there's no morning tea, but there's a cup of tea.
I think we should keep going, Brian.
We are live streaming the meeting. 5 minutes late.
Do you think we should?
To formally adjourn if we do, but
Just 5 minutes.
It's up to the meeting. We're programmed. If we don't adjourn now, Andrew, we'll be going through to 11:30.
Very, very short break, but I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
I've got another commitment at 11, but I'm only because that was.
We'll have a 2-minute
scheduled in the
break.
diary.
Yeah, it wasn't our job.
No. 2-minute break.
one.
Gold card, Andrew.
That was a low blow.
That was.
Deal with you later.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody, to the Environmental Implementation Committee. So, and thank you again for the public forum. And just to reaffirm what our CE to my right said, happy birthday, Councillor Noon.
Let's make one comment.
Yeah.
And I think Lloyd.
So Bill was birthday today as well. So
Ah.
to be acknowledged.
It's one big party around here.
Big party. Look forward to the shout later.
And we
today.
didn't even have a morning tea.
Exactly. Well, that's another issue as well. Anyway, confirmation of the agenda. I'll take the agenda as read, the two key items. Declaration of interest, any declaration of interest? If not, confirmation of the minutes. I'll read the minutes. I'm happy to move the acceptance of those minutes. Do we have a second? Kate? Thank you. I put the motion, those four.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, we're going to jump straight to our first report. Yeah, on page 7 of 28. But welcome everybody. Gavin, Libby, Anna. So our first report is biosecurity, biodiversity initiatives and partnerships. The authors are Anna in front of us and Libby, and endorsed by Gavin. The purpose to provide a report on biodiversity and biosecurity initiatives, partnerships and projects as per the annual plan level of service measures. Key points that jump out for me as I skim through attachment 1, page 11, where the Eco Fund, General Eco Fund is outlined in terms of biosecurity, biodiversity initiatives and organisations supported with funding and key deliverables. So we can see that on page 11 to 28, all the good work is coming out of our Eco Fund, predator devices, native plants, volunteer hours. On the next page, incentive funding for native plantings after wild and pine removal. Then I think there's 4 projects there, native plants, some in soil enhancements. There's also incentive funding for water quality, that's great. Incentive funding for sustained rabbit management, it's great. Fencing, management plans. And there's also an outline of the partnerships that were being involved. Some key partners, Tauga Biodiversity Forum, Hokanui Vegetation, Catlin's Dock, Haleo Project, Site-Led Work, QE2, Future Development, TAs, Tomahawk. Other project partnerships, J4 and QE2, Tari, wasn't that a wonderful hui we had the other day? Oak Tree, Site-Led Working Group, Lagra Siphon, Tomahawka, Tilkatoto, J4N again. So there it is. Anna, Libby, Gavin, what have I missed out? Any comments from your perspective in terms of all the great work that's going on?
No, thank you. You've covered that off. Thank you, Chair. So I don't have any points to do.
Just very minor comment that I think in there we talk about a contract with Predator-Free Dunedin being under review. That was at the time we wrote this paper. That project has now been signed and is underway.
Cool. Thank you. I've got a hand up to my right here, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm happy if you say, no, we can't go there. This is environmental implementation looking backwards, but we've just had some really compelling submissions about environmental implementation work going forwards and the risk of the success of some of those projects in the next year, which is relatively challenging. Would you, as a prior, I mean, I'm not quite sure where we're at with priority work streams. And I know in the water quality space, we've still got some work coming, and I think the same as we signed off yesterday on hazards. I'm rather concerned what we've heard this morning and the submissions on about the effectiveness or the disruption to our effectiveness working with our partners in the environmental implementation space on predator control, especially going forward. Have you got any comments about the priority of the works that we've heard? I mean, it's substantial, 660 1,000 hectares is a substantial area. We just heard about from
Southern Lakes.
yeah, Southern Lakes. Are you concerned, or do you share the concern that we've had expressed about the effectiveness to carry on?
Through the chair, I think that there's some good points that they've raised through their submissions, and yes, I do share the concern if they can't continue on with their work, we won't have the biodiversity and biosecurity outcomes that we're currently having. But I think, well, Anna and I brought a paper to council in August last year around large scale funding requests and having some ideas around how we might be able to look at those and whether that's through upscaling the eco fund or something like that. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to have a discussion as an organisation around what types of activities we can fund and do fund, because that it is, you're right, is a significant amount of money. But I think that I can't answer that question right now around whether we should fund them or not.
If I recall, that August paper deferred it for the long-term plan discussion.
Yes.
As opposed to this year and the, yeah.
I thought it was a noting paper that I think the outcome was that it was deferred. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my understanding. LTP discussion, Kate, yeah?
Yeah, no, some people are listening in on this and they have to understand that process. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not that clear.
Yeah,
We've just got some outstanding, and I think the public deserve to understand that.
cool. Point one way, Alexa.
Kia ora team, and nice work. Government and councils around the country provided huge amounts of funding to support jobs and income, and it was all a COVID response. As a result of that, as we've now seen and heard today as well, career pathways in conservation and nature and preservation, all the good things that we want to do have been established. So how do we now, and this is what I want to thinking of our finance team and all of us, around how do we now pivot that funding from being a COVID response to being a much longer, much greater response to biodiversity and climate change? Big question for you, but
Who's going to answer that?
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, it's a question that the staff here can answer.
I'm sure it's not.
I feel it's probably more a question for your workshop this afternoon.
Okay, cool.
It's
Are
gorgeous.
you okay with that, Alexa?
I do. I just want to plant that idea.
Plant that idea, plant that seed. Cool. Lloyd, Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you, just through you, Chair. I've got a quick question. Eco Fund. I was trying to find what it tallied up to. I was just wondering there. And the other question is one that I had at the pre-meeting. So do you know how much it tallies up to?
The Eco Fund should be just on about 290, because that was how much we had available and we expended all of it. And then we had one project that couldn't proceed, so that money went back into this year's Eco Fund.
Okay.
So the amount that was approved for Eco Fund was 290. For the other amounts there, the rabbit incentive or management was 100,000, and the planting after water quality, I believe, was 30, and the planting after wild and conifer control was also 30, but it was undersubscribed. So it was 50, apologies, but it was undersubscribed. It added up to around 24,000 and some change.
So
it would be really good to have a total on the bottom of the tally of what the total amount was. And my other question or comment is, I look at the map, and I mentioned this the other day, I look at the map and there seems to be a great big hole in the middle. So just wondering, just around when you're making your decisions, do you look at the distribution of where the funds are going? Because there's like a whole lot of dots up around in the Lakes District and quite a few dots around Dunedin and not too many dots in the middle. And I know there's been like applications turned down in the middle. That makes sense?
Yeah. The distribution is not one of the assessment criteria.
Oh,
it's a point to note though.
As you say, there were some probably in the middle that were turned down, but there wasn't a lot either. There was a handful. So there is a predominance of community groups, and as you can see in those areas.
And our catchment advisors will continue to work with groups in those areas to support them in applying for funding in the future.
Thank you.
Well, Anna, can I just pass that back? Should area distribution be part of the selection criteria?
It would depend on the outcomes you're after. So if we're looking for if we're more targeted,
Yeah.
and we are moving to a more targeted approach to how we do this. At the moment, the assessment criteria is around things for value for money,
Yeah.
capacity of the group, technical methodology, realistic outcomes or outputs they're intending to do, and how it aligns with eco-fund and or strategic priorities of the council. So those strategic priorities are not at this point based around FMUs or sub-regions, they're Otago region-wide. So in that case, what should happen and has happened last year is that on a merits basis, this was tenure blind or region blind, so to speak. It's the best projects for those criteria came to the top. Having said that, once we move through integrated catchment management and we have catchment action plans around our various FMUs, then that may enable us to be a little bit more targeted. And if equity of distribution of resources across FMUs or larger, broader regions within Otago is a concern, then we can build that in. But we need to, like everything, accountable and justified reason for including that.
Yeah, well, the criteria has kept evolving,
Yeah,
and maybe this is a point for consideration, Gavin.
I was going to say that this is a multi-year program and this is just a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
So perhaps when we bring a paper back in 2 weeks' time for the next round of eco-fund approvals, just for information, we can give some information on geographic distribution of past funding, just to get a sense of how it's working out across the region, just for information.
Yeah, because it's, sounds good. Sounds good. Any objection to that? Sounds like a good idea. Thanks, Kevin. I've got Andrew and then I've got Alan.
Look, just very briefly, paragraphs 15 through to 18, just want to acknowledge the development of those partnerships with those key stakeholders and that are mentioned through those paragraphs. And I recall when the PES plan was developed, it was site-led projects and tapping into collaborating with partners who have similar visions and objectives, etc., was critical to the success of the PES plan. So I think this is fantastic. Nice to see these partnerships developing and maturing.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, look, thanks. Just adding to the discussion about the Eco Fund, I understand there will be a paper coming later in the year reviewing those things, the criteria and whatnot, and so that would be an opportunity for council to consider that. That will be coming up anyway.
Sounds great, Alan. Thank you. Thank you. Kate?
Just asking, because we have to do it before we do the motion, and I'm happy to move the motion, but I may want to add another one to it. I know at a previous meeting we've talked about, and I think it's been a public meeting, about the problems with jobs for nature funding, and I think we directed you, but tell me if I've got this wrong, to have some inquiries or discussions with government about that. Is that something we've done as a motion or not?
I can't remember being a motion, but I do remember committing to doing that, and I have. So I've met with the new chief executive of the Ministry of the Environment, and he shared with me some central government focus on this, some of which he shared in confidence, and some of which is related to the budget announcements next week. And so it's challenging for me either to have shared some of that with staff or with council, to be perfectly frank, and I'm not going to do that in front of me.
So may I ask a subsequent question?
Yes,
and this is looking forward again. It's not, I think, in taking on board Councillor Noon's comments about how great it is that we've got some really strong relationships here. I am concerned, and I'm being apolitical. This is, COVID's been awful to everyone, but gearing up some of these projects and then stopping them at 3 years when they're really just getting their feet running has been paused. Is there any merit in that, and us resolving at a level that we ask formally that the government reconsider at least some funding for these groups while we can transition through the long-term plan process? It has never been an issue that is at a scale that we could have really dealt with at the annual plan, and the timing has been awful. But these groups are absolutely doing God's work and doing our work, and doing work that some regional councils have been doing on the ground themselves.
So I'm happy to respond to that. Look, the sector is well aware of this issue. I raised it with the regional CEOs group firstly, frankly, last year. The regional CEOs have now taken that through as well. There's a strong groundswell of focus to try and, we're perfectly aware that Jobs for Nature funding is coming to an end. We're also very well aware that some of that funding has been very effective. Not all of it, I suspect. We've just had some public submissions on some of that funding and the problem that we have when it disappears. So these discussions are happening with central government, I can promise you. And at some point, yes, local government will have to consider how they can support potentially some of that funding shortfall. And it does come down to where central government ends up landing.
But should we be doing it, would it enhance it if we have a motion today that asks the chair write to the MEPs highlighting these issues, especially for the projects that we've heard about today? Would that be of any assistance, or do we just roll over and let it happen?
I think if you wanted to put a motion, Kate, that would be a very appropriate thing to build upon some of the issues that we've heard today and such like.
If you want to make a comment.
Yes,
sorry, Martin. Around about 12 months ago, we wrote a letter to Minister O'Connor, Minister of Lands and Minister of Biosecurity, raising this exact issue, about our concern as we move through beyond Jobs for Nature, etc. funding. So, and we received a reply basically acknowledging that yes, they're across this and it's forefront of their mind going forward.
So what are your thoughts, Andrew? Would it be appropriate to do a motion just reminding?
Probably not to him. If you're going to send it somewhere else, that may be useful, but we'd certainly let the minister know our concerns.
Yeah. So it's a different minister anyway. The minister.
No, well, the Jobs for Nature funding is sort of a cross-government initiative, so that's the challenge. It was a COVID fund, and the pandemic, was supposedly over. So the government's been really keen to say that no one should have an expectation of ongoing funding through Jobs for Nature. But the difficulty is that some of those groups, as we've just heard, are doing an unbelievably great job. We're helping facilitate some of that work. Libby just indicated that, yes, we would miss some of that work in terms of the outcomes that we're hoping to help facilitate. And of course, we'd love to see some of that funding being ongoing. And it may well be that at some point through the long-term, I suspect through the long-term plan process, that ORC chooses to make up some of the shortfall.
Good. So I'm happy to move in an additional motion that we ask our chair to write to the Minister of Finance before the budget. We're expecting high expectations you're going to be affected. Highlighting the issue of the transition of these projects and our inability to, because of the timing of the long-term plan, to deal with it and to seriously look at transitional funding that can at least give us time to consider those through our long-term plan process.
Okay.
Does that give you enough room to move this motion that you
Can I get you to look at that?
Yeah, you look at that, Kate? Is that what you said?
No, it's just
Transitional funding.
Yeah.
If you finish that with transitional funding, you get it.
Is it the Minister of Finance?
Well, I think at the end of the day, his questions.
Copy in environment and conservation if you wanted. The two ministers.
Okay, and Chair Gretchen, you're comfortable, right? So you tell us when you're happy with that motion, Kate. So Kate's happy with that, Alexa's happy with that. Any discussion? If no discussion, Lloyd, or was that you stretching out?
My discussion is, we're signalling at a governance level that, we've got this issue, it's already been signalled at management level. But I think we just have to be a little bit careful that we start signalling out who we send it to. I'm happy to send it to the Minister of Finance, because he's the man with the purse strings. But when you start, do we do the Minister of Conservation? If we do him, we need to do the Minister of Regional Development, and all the areas where there's been Jobs for Nature funding funneled. I would probably tend to, that's my only comment. Do we need, I just wonder whether we just send the letter to the one, and if we're going to copy it to other people, we need to pretty much have a broader scope of copying rather than just
So just Minister of
Conservation.
I think
does-
Minister of Finance, I'm happy whoever gets CC'd into it, but I think the Minister of Finance is the absolute
key
one we have to
person,
do
yeah.
this with. So I did put pressure on.
Could we change it to and copy other relevant departments, something like that? No, that's not wishy-washy, isn't it?
Relevant ministries, yeah.
Almost, yeah.
Okay, so we've got two motions there. One to note the report. Second, recommends the council ask the RCG to write to the Minister of Finance and copy to relevant ministries highlighting the issue of transition of JM4N project and inability to address transitional funding due to timing of the LPTP. And Kate's happy with that. Alexa's happy with that.
Yep.
No further discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So we're going to move on to our second report. Okay, our second report, 7.2, Wilding Conifer Strategy Implementation. Once again, the authors are Libby and Anna, endorsed by Gavin, the three people in front of us. The purpose to seek council endorsement of the Regional Wilding Conifer Strategy and Associated Implementation Plan. Key points, a regional wilding conifer strategy addressing the objective and regional pest management has been developed in consultation with key stakeholders. The strategy is a commitment under the Biosecurity Operational Plan, and the annual plan requires actions within the Biosecurity Operational Plan to be progressed. While there is a national scale wilding conifer management strategy and several of the local area control groups have their own operational strategies, there is no regional scale strategy for wilding conifers. This process was developed following engagement and consultation with Okaha, MPI DOC, Whakatipu Wilding Control Group, Central Otago Wilding Control Group, QLDC, CODC, Walden Pine Network, Forestry Companies, Farm Forestry and Federated Farmers. So while there seems to be a lot of stakeholders that are there, there have been a number of exclusions. One is in relation to the National Environmental Standards for Plantation Forestry, which has been reviewed by MPI, and another one is regarding the permanent carbon forest, which is being addressed by MPI. And the key page for me, for all of this, is page 28 of 28, the last page, where it outlines what the implementation for the Wilding Conifer strategy is in fact, and that's regional surveillance programs developed, creation of spatial records, communication and engagement, regional cost analysis, communications, business case, mechanisms to facilitate the establishment of community-led wilding conifer control, assessment of effectiveness, mechanism for non-compliance, following up non-compliance, lead and overview of TA rules and conditions. There it is. Libby, Anna, Gavin, what have I missed?
Through the chair, you've missed nothing.
Actually, what about the cost? The 260,000. So actually that'll all come out in the recommendations as he flicks back to the front. Yeah, so there's a cost of 260,000 that you're expecting the ORC to fund. Correct. Okay, I'm going to open it up. Enough of me. Alexa.
I'd just like to thank Libby and Anna and Gavin. There's been a lot of effort gone into this, and those stakeholders we've met many times, and there's been lots of going round and round and round, and we now have a strategy that a lot of people are agreeing. So I want to thank you for the efforts in that, and I'll move the motion if that's appropriate.
Cool. Just put a mover. Any others? Lloyd, thank you.
Lloyd, through you, just a question. So basically, good work, and you've got a strategy all prepared there, which is understandable and relatable. Now, my question is, currently we have your implementation plan, or your plan is for 60,000 in the next annual plan period, and then 200,000 for the next annual plan period, or
Long-term plan.
long-term plan, come through in the long-term plan. So what what you're asking here today, is this to confirm the plan, but is it also to confirm the funding going forward? Or is that a long-term plan decision?
So through the chair, it will be a long-term plan decision.
So we're not committing to that today?
I don't think we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because it needs to go through the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lloyd.
Just clarification.
No, thank you for picking that one up. Thank you. Anybody else? Is this going to make positive moves forward, Gary, in your patch?
I'm in two minds about, like, for the money we're looking to spend.
Yeah.
We have groups at the moment who are out there chopping down pines.
Yeah.
Working with landowners, they're
Yeah.
making progress. We're looking to spend $260,000.
Yeah.
And we don't cut down any pines for $260,000. So we create organisational need, and maybe that organisational need is there.
Yeah.
But it is $260,000 in a budget where we are under pressure to balance the budget.
But the overall budget was like, weren't we spending in the order of $10 million in the whole Wild and Pine strategy implementation? So isn't a small change? And hasn't in fact those control groups actually come up with the strategy? They were part of the stakeholders. Sorry, I'm being argumentative today.
No, that's fine. No, I mean, I'm just also conscious of our forward financial planning.
Yeah.
And just challenging the need for the additional staff time. I concur with you. I agree that the groups have all been involved. So maybe that need is there.
Yeah.
But this money is hard fought. And
Yeah.
we have demands for a lot more money across the organisation. So I guess that's the question I'm asking.
No. Well, is there, I mean, it's a difficult question to respond to, but Anna.
Yeah, it is something that's come up at a higher level, I guess, in talking to some of the control groups in particular. Whilst they see the need for a lot of these key areas of work around improving our knowledge base so we can make better decisions about where we focus, what are the priorities, what are the highest risk areas, communicating and educating awareness around wilding pines so that people are saying, oh, we don't run into those issues where people want to keep them, even if they're a large sea source. So all those foundational, if you like, activities are seen as a need, definitely. To acknowledge your point, Councillor Kelleher, the groups did say they're worried that there might be money expended on things that are good in absence of control. So we're aware that the control work is continuing, mainly funded through the national program, which is decreasing. But this suite of actions for next year and then 3 years after that will put us in a good position to make that business case to work out how do we do significant funding for that control work. Without the background work, we may just be putting, I wouldn't say it's good money after bad, it's definitely doing stuff, but is it in the right place? And how do we know what impact we're making? So it's about trying to get a better handle on it so we can spend more efficiently, perhaps.
Yeah.
Great. No, that's a very helpful explanation. Thank you.
You're going to get Gary voting for this. You know. But there are some really good things there, like regional surveillance programs developed, creation of spatial records. Like I'd be thinking, well, that should already be there, you know, regional cost benefit analysis, a business case to get more funding, you know, because of the funding shortfall that's existing, assessment of effectiveness, non-compliance, because we keep talking about that. Anyway, I think we're done, Kate.
I'm happy to move to the report, but I would.
No, you're happy to second it. Alexa's moving.
Yeah, but I would like to talk to it at some stage.
Cool. So I think we've had, there's no further discussion. We're going to move her in a seconder. Invite, if you want to speak to it.
What Alexa made, yes.
I feel I already have.
Okay.
I'm just because we're going into an annual plan.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that I think there's a real issue fundamentally with democracy at the moment because we are getting so much pressure to pick up projects or to be the end goal without any clear funding long-term for these projects. There's some really good work happening in the wild and control. It's building communities really well. It's good collaboration, but just as the same with the pest control, and a whole lot of other good works. Government is developing projects and then walking away from them as a funder and leaving it for us without the capability or the mechanisms to deal with them well. And it is causing no end of frustration at every local government level and making our job a lot harder. And there has to, and I'm feeling really sorry for the staff and even more sorry for the people that had started these projects up and got on board farmers and landowners with the intention and the expectation of ongoing funding. And I'm just finding it really flawed that it comes to be our table to deal with something that we didn't create. Good works as they are, and we need to be able to do this better, and it has to be across party mechanisms that get a much better resolution and ongoing support for these good works.
Cool. Okay, we've got a move in a second, and the motion is to endorse the regional wild and conifer strategy and associated implementation plan for approval by council. With no further discussion, I'm going to put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much, Anna, Libby, Gavin, councillors. That's the end of today's Environmental Implementation Committee meeting.